Hi, welcome to this presentation on value models, business models, and ecosystems. And in this presentation, I would talk about how technology companies, which are on the top, really maybe inadvertently or by design, focus on the value models, business models, and ecosystems. And these value models, business models, and ecosystems are connected with paradigms. And by paradigms, I mean either a technology change or a social change or something which changes the whole value system of a society. So I'll cover what a paradigm means in later in the slide. And then after the paradigm change happens, there's a new value model created, which is sustained by a business model, and the business model is sustained by the ecosystem. So that's how these things have been working since 1900s. So first, let's get beyond the digitalization hype. And many people nowadays just throw around a digitalization word, and it makes them sound very impressive. At least that's what they think. But I think you really need to go beyond the words and what value this digitalization adds to the entire uh, society. So if you look at new things which come up, so some years ago it was cloud, then Hadoop, and then it was this blockchain, IoT, and everyone like talks about, throws around these words like they are doing something great and it's going to change the world. But you need to look at the forest and not on trees. And by giving this analogy, I mean that any technology like IoT or blockchain or others is more like a tree. So it has its own unique flavor and so on. But you need to look at how it functions in the whole ecosystem. So you should not miss the forest for the trees. And trees contribute in their own way. So like technology like blockchain or uh, cloud or Hadoop or others would contribute in its own way. But then you need to see how the value model of society functions, and you look at the whole picture, not at that particular technology. So you need to look at value, not get caught up in technology, and you need to see how this value model and technology fits in the entire ecosystem. So in a forest, as you know, you have different organisms and they basically help each other, and that sustains the forest ecosystem. Similarly, with technology and the whole ecosystem, there are different value adds of different technologies, different players, and so on. And that makes the whole ecosystem function properly. So, this is a parable about six blind men and an elephant. And the blind men have been blind since birth, so they have never seen an elephant. But they have heard people say that elephant is the largest animal. It's big, like a two-story uh, building. It's huge. It has big legs and so on. But they have never seen it. So someone decides that let's bring this an elephant and let these blind men feel the elephant. And then I apply the same thinking to the cloud parable, and it's remarkably similar. So when the six blind men get an elephant, they start feeling different parts of it. Since it's really big, they feel they have just 10 seconds and they feel a certain part of it. And each one gives an gives an opinion about the elephant based on his previous experiences. So someone says it's like a spear, someone says it's a fan, it's a wall, and now an elephant is not really big. It's big, but it's easy to cover in maybe feel different parts of it. But the cloud is really big, and there are different aspects to the cloud. So as you see, in a cloud, there are different players who give their own kind of perception of what a cloud is. Be it Google, be it Microsoft, be it Amazon, everyone has his own perceptions. So taking this analogy of elephant and six blind men and applying it to a cloud, I tried to find the picture of a cloud elephant to take the same analogies. So most vendors see it in a similar way. So you have the SAS saying it's analytics. That's what you need to have an efficient business. Microsoft, Google Enterprise would say it's email server, and they have different models. You have this email exchange server, and Google would have its whatever as a service, pay as you go kind of model. Then Google would have another angle to it saying search and advertising. That's what this whole thing is about. LinkedIn would be identity and sharing, LinkedIn and Facebook. You would have Amazon with its sales approach and sales focus. Then you have eBuilder with its, or business process as a service companies with its business process focus. Then you have outsourcing companies like Accenture, the Indian companies like TCS and so on, IBM and so on. And then they have a focus on we have the skills so we can outsource. And we know the cloud. Then you have the telecom companies which say we have connectivity and access, so we build up data centers and we build up the cloud. So as you can see, each one of these is trying to position themselves and trying to have a business model which can pay for from their existing position. Like a telecom operator saying, I have connectivity, so I build a data center or a cloud. Now, this really doesn't give you a holistic picture because it clouds your thinking. And then now you have this AI companies which come and say we are automation and we'll solve everything. But again, this has to be seen in the context of a value model, business model, and ecosystem. So let's first speak about what paradigms are. So paradigms was a concept which was talked about by Thomas Kuhn in 1950s or 60s, I think. And to explain in simple terms, paradigm is a set boundary of thinking, and that's the way you think. And you can't think beyond this paradigm. And when this paradigm is broken, it results in a new value model. So I'm going to give you an exercise to identify the cards in the next slide. And it will be shown for just a millisecond or whatever my finger speed is on this keyboard. And you have to identify the card. And after that slide, I'm going to ask you a question and you need to reflect yourself. So ready? Could you identify the card which was shown on the screen? It was for a very short time, but tell me which card it was, or think, you can't tell me obviously, but think which card it was. Now you must have identified it as, let me show you the cards now. So then so these are the cards. Now, most of you must have identified it as a spade or a heart. And then you see that this is neither a spade nor a heart. It's something, it's a black heart, so I don't know what it's called, and a red spade, which we don't know. But we have this set paradigm of thinking that a red and heart shaped is a heart, whereas a black kind of heart shaped is a spade. And we operate in that paradigm of cards which we have been playing since childhood. So to think beyond the paradigm is a bit difficult for us. So this actually indicates what a paradigm is. It's a limited set boundary of your thinking. And once you break a paradigm, the whole thing we observe is a trend. And this is particularly applicable in the technology industry or in the industry as such, right from the industrial age. where you have a paradigm shift. And because of the paradigm shift, you have a value model which comes up, and this gives you new value. So when steam was or steam engine was introduced, you had a paradigm shift that you could harness steam power, and that gave you a different value model of a train which could carry many people and so on. So it changed the whole transportation paradigm because of the steam engine. And it changed the industry paradigm because you could use coal and other things to generate steam and basically power many things. So once you have this value model, to sustain a value and deliver value, you require a business model to do that. And to sustain a business model, you require an ecosystem. So it works in a chain. So where you have a paradigm shift, then a value model shift. To sustain the value model, you have a business model and then an ecosystem. And that is what has been happening for hundreds of years. You take anything from steam engine to airplanes to electricity to any kind of invention which happens, which broke paradigms. And this is what followed. So I have been looking at companies since 1970s, and those who dominated or were on the top were those companies which either by accident or by intention address these three areas: the value model, what value is going to be delivered; the business model, how you are going to deliver the value; and finally the ecosystem, who sustains this value model and business model. So unless they when they answered that, they basically dominated. And it has happened since 1970s with word processors, operating systems, Microsoft. In this case, Microsoft actually worked in an ecosystem play in the 1980s with the computer manufacturers, not laptop, desktop computer manufacturers, where they could sell their hardware and load a Microsoft operating system and sell it. And the Intel chip makers had this whole thing in Windows Intel kind of ecosystem. Whereas Apple went its own way and it said, we manufacture hardware, we manufacture software, and we make the best in the world, since the hardware and software is perfectly matched. But Microsoft didn't have this issue, and because of the ecosystem, so they built up a value model with the operating system, with the word processor and all those kind of things. But then they built up a business model to sustain it and an ecosystem to sustain it. Whereas Apple had just themselves. Then it happened with supply chain software with SAP dominating. And then you had many companies like IBS, Intentia, which were also ERP companies. And they looked at supply chains, but they never focused on the business model and ecosystem. Perhaps they focused on the value model, which was we harmonize your whole supply chain, but they didn't focus on a business model. So they said, the Intentia and IBS said, we do the implementation ourselves since we make the software. Whereas SAP said that I have a training mechanism or training factory where we would train and certify on our software products, SAP products. And for each software we sell, there is 8x of implementation revenue going on, in which all these people in the ecosystem want to have a part, which resulted in like thousands of SAP implementers and so on, who were trained, certified by SAP, knew the SAP product, and that really scaled up the whole ecosystem. It happened with Dell computers, where people wanted value. So the value model far outplayed the business model and ecosystem, because you just needed to order online and you had the best computers for the lowest price. And there was not much of a delivery kind of thing in a computer. So online books, same thing. They focused on value model. It was perhaps the business model was online ordering. And since everyone had an online thing, you could just order. So a business model was set up for Dell and also for Amazon. And ecosystem is anyone who appreciated that value really started buying from Dell or from Amazon. Then you had this search again, which was again a value model, search for free, and a business model where they monetize the ad word, and an ecosystem where advertisers wanted to get in touch with the people who search for those words. Then, interestingly, Apple from 2000 onwards left that whole go it alone kind of thing and went into an ecosystem mode with iTunes. And there is this interesting thing where Steve Jobs did not want to release the iTunes on a Microsoft platform. And there was this guy who was, I think, from Trio, or the CEO of Trio, who was recruited by Apple. Trio or some other, I think the HP company, which had the operating system. And he was recruited, I think, from that company. And he fought with Steve Jobs saying, we want to release it on the Microsoft platform also. And because of that, and though Steve Jobs didn't agree with it, because when they released it on the Microsoft platform, they went into a big ecosystem with iTunes. So they really stumbled on the ecosystem when this guy made a decision to go to have iTunes on the Microsoft ecosystem. Because imagine if you had iPods and you could only load it from a Macintosh, it would be just 2% of desktop or laptop users globally. Whereas when they released it on Microsoft platform, you could actually have the iPod without having a Macintosh laptop. And that meant 98% of the population. So that was basically going into an ecosystem play. And the business model was, of course, there. So you needed songs which you could buy cheaply with this iTunes and legally. So you had a business model there. And then in 2008, 1 year after releasing the iPhone in 2007, they went with the App Stores model, which again was an ecosystem play, where you had developers come in there, develop apps, which enhanced the functionality of an iPhone. And then that was copied again by Android. So you have this whole ecosystem play. Then identity, Facebook is, of course, ecosystem is basically people want to be with their friends. So it's not really a value model, business model, ecosystem play, but it's more of a network effect, which is predominant here. Though there will be some parts of value model and business model, but if Facebook wants to sustain itself, then it really needs to look at these three, because the network effect will die after some time. Mobile messaging, WhatsApp, again, it's more of a network effect. CRM, Salesforce. So what makes you think it won't happen with AI or any of the new technologies coming up? So let's take AI as an example. And AI vendors are at a crossroad today, where they basically are selling technology. And I don't think that will last. You have thousands of AI companies. And you had, as I said, gave the examples. It will happen similarly here, that a company which focuses on direct kind of sales, or I do it alone kind of thing, will fade away. Whereas a company which does an ecosystem value model, business model play will dominate the industry in AI also. So what I've done is I've looked at companies from 1970s, and I've really looked at what paradigm change happened. And because of this paradigm change, what was the value model which changed? And because of this value model, the business model which they used, and the ecosystem to sustain that value model and business model. So you see Microsoft 1975 to 2000, it was a value model, business model, ecosystem play. Google from 2000 to 2020, perhaps it would be in that era. Facebook 2007 to 2017. I think Facebook will be past this 2018 onwards. Then you have Amazon from 94 to 2016. Perhaps Amazon I would put my bets on, because that's, I think, one of the most innovative and respectable companies who think through the value models, business models, ecosystems. Apple, I'm not too sure whether they'll carry the same thought process in the future. Dell is basically, they have gone through this. I don't think they think around this kind of paradigm shift or value models or business models. Then you have Oracle 80s to 90s, Salesforce 2000 onwards. Perhaps the Oracle model will also start faltering. SAP was a fantastic value model, business model, ecosystem play. But I think they need to rethink, because there are a number of alternatives which give value at much lower price points. So they would have to rethink their strategy. And then I take companies like IBM Watson, IPsoft, and Nuance, and other companies. And again, here the same thing will play out with the artificial intelligence systems. So a few words on value models, business models, and ecosystems. It is very important to understand dependencies and understand what sustains technology. So technology generally comes as a paradigm shift, and AI is also a paradigm shift. So yeah, you can have visual recognition, you can do many things, but what's the value created? That's what you really need to think through. And you have to start with value creation and not technology. Secondly, digital is a mindset and technology is just an enabler. So digital really means looking not only at the technology, but the interplay of the value created by the technology, the business model to sustain the value, and an ecosystem to sustain the business model. So you have to look at it as a whole play, like looking at the forest and not the trees. So sustainability, as I mentioned, is the key. Another interesting thing is a value model, business model, and ecosystem decay over time, because you have other smaller paradigm shifts, and which, like in the SAP case, the whole supply chain can be done by other players at much lower cost, and an implementation phase which is much easier than SAP. So SAP really needs to revisit its value model, business model, and ecosystem, because if it doesn't, it's going to die out. So like a radioactive decay, it has a half-life. And as soon as you have a value model up there, it starts to decay. And the value becomes progressively lower and lower over a period of time as newer things come to give the same value at much lower price points. So that's what you need to really look at. Now, technology, as I've mentioned, acts as a paradigm shift and changes the value model. So you have all this steam changed human power, cars and engines change the horse model, air travel changed rail travel and boat travel. So you have these technology acting as paradigm shift. And as I mentioned earlier, a paradigm shift results in a change in value model, and then a business model to sustain it, and then an ecosystem. So yeah, this was a short presentation on value models. Write to me on info@geon.com. Thank you.